September 5th, 2012. Leicester, England. A construction crew is digging in a municipal parking lot. Council parking lot number 4. Nothing special. Just another car park in central Leicester, surrounded by brick buildings and shops. The workers are excavating for a new city development project. It's routine work. Shovels bite into dirt. A backhoe scoops earth. The sun is out. It's a normal Thursday morning. Then, around mid-morning, one of the workers, a man operating a small excavator, feels the bucket hit something solid, not rock, not clay. Something that gives slightly, but doesn't break. He stops the machine, climbs down, brushes away dirt with his gloved hand, and sees it. Bone, pale, aged bone. Human bone. The worker calls over his supervisor. They stare at it. This happens sometimes on construction sites in old cities. You hit medieval graves, Roman ruins, forgotten burial grounds. The supervisor makes a call. Within 2 hours, a team from the University of Leicester Archaeology Department arrives. They've been expecting this call. A historian named Philippa Langley had convinced the university to monitor this exact parking lot. She believed something important was buried here. The archaeologists cordon off the area, set up a grid, begin carefully excavating by hand, using trowels and brushes, and what they uncover, layer by layer, stops them cold. A complete human skeleton. Male. Adult. Lying in a shallow grave. No coffin. No wooden remnants. No shroud fragments. Just a body that was dumped into earth and covered. The skeleton is positioned awkwardly. The grave is too small for the body. Whoever dug this grave did it quickly, carelessly. The head is tilted at an unnatural angle. The arms are positioned strangely, hands near the pelvis, possibly bound or just shoved in. This wasn't a burial with care or ceremony. This was a body disposed of. But this body tells a story. The archaeologists see it immediately. The spine is severely curved. Scoliosis. Advanced. The vertebrae twist to the right, creating a visible S-curve. In life, this person's right shoulder would have been noticeably higher than the left. One hip would have jutted out. This was a visible deformity. Not crippling. This person could clearly walk, function, but noticeable. And then there are the wounds. The skull has massive trauma. The archaeologists count 10 distinct injuries to the head and face. Most are perimortem, inflicted at or near the time of death. 2 wounds are catastrophic. One is a large slicing blow to the back of the skull. It removed a section of bone. The cut is deep, angled downward. This blow would have penetrated the brain. Instant death. The second fatal wound is at the base of the skull, a narrow, deep puncture. Something, a sword tip, a dagger, a blade of some kind, was thrust upward through the base of the skull and into the brain stem. Also instant death. This person was killed twice, redundantly. And there are more wounds. A cut across the lower jaw that removed bone. Sword cuts to the top of the skull. Injuries that suggest the victim was on the ground, face down or face up, being hacked at by multiple attackers. And here's the detail that makes the archaeologists stop and stare. Embedded in the spine, between 2 vertebrae, is an arrowhead. It's lodged in the bone. The arrow came from behind, struck the back, and embedded in the spine. It didn't kill. It hit vertebrae, not organs. But it would have been agonizing. And it suggests this person was shot while fighting or fleeing. But there's one more wound, a stab wound to the right pelvis, the right buttock. This wound is post-mortem, inflicted after death. It's a humiliation injury. In medieval combat, stabbing a defeated enemy's buttocks was a symbolic insult. It degraded the corpse, mocked the dead. This wasn't a random soldier. This was someone important, someone whose killers wanted to humiliate, even after death. The archaeologists carefully photograph everything, map the skeleton's position. Note the grave's location. They're digging in what would have been, 500 years ago, the choir of Greyfriars Church, a Franciscan friary that stood here until the 1530s. And there's a legend, a rumor, a story passed down for centuries, that a king was buried in Greyfriars Church. A king killed in battle in 1485. A king whose grave was lost when the church was destroyed. If this skeleton is who they think it is, they've just found royalty under parking space number 27. But first, they need to prove it. They need to know who this was. And to do that, they need to go back 500 years, to a muddy field, to a battle, to the day this man died. August 22nd, 1485. Bosworth Field, Leicestershire. The sun rises over a marsh. Two armies are positioned across a field, maybe a mile apart. It's early morning. The ground is wet from recent rain. Muddy, treacherous footing for horses. On one side of the field, King Richard III of England, 32 years old. He's been king for 2 years. He wears full plate armor, a circlet crown over his helmet so everyone knows he's the king. Around him, his household knights, his commanders, his army. Maybe 8,000 men, infantry, archers, cavalry. Richard is a warrior. He fought in battles before he became king. He knows how this works. On the other side of the field, Henry Tudor, 28 years old, an exile who spent most of his life in France, a Lancastrian claimant with a dubious genealogical claim to the English throne. His claim goes through his mother, through a line that was explicitly barred from the succession. But Henry has French backing, mercenaries. And critically, he has the support of powerful English nobles who've grown tired of Richard. Henry's army is smaller, maybe 5,000 men. But he has something Richard doesn't. He has the Stanley family. Lord Stanley and Sir William Stanley are two of the most powerful nobles in England. They brought armies to Bosworth, but they're not committed to either side yet. They're waiting, watching, seeing who'll win. Richard knows this. He's sent messages to the Stanleys, reminders of their oaths, threats. Lord Stanley's son is in Richard's camp as a hostage. If Stanley betrays Richard, his son dies. But wars aren't won by hostages. They're won by whoever kills the other leader first. The battle begins around dawn. Richard's army moves first. Archers exchange volleys. Infantry clashes. It's brutal, chaotic medieval combat. Men hacking at each other with swords, poleaxes, hammers. No gunpowder yet. This is blade and muscle. For a while, it's unclear who's winning. Richard's army has the numbers, but Henry's men are fighting desperately. They're traitors if they lose. They'll be executed, so they fight hard. And then the critical moment arrives. Richard sees it from his position. Henry Tudor is on the far side of the battlefield, surrounded by a small bodyguard, maybe 200 men. Richard makes a decision, a wild, desperate, brave, possibly insane decision. He's going to kill Henry personally. He gathers his household knights, his best fighters, maybe 80 men, and he charges. Richard spurs his horse across the battlefield. His knights follow. They smash into Henry's bodyguard. It's a wedge of armored cavalry punching through infantry. Richard's axe and sword are cutting men down. He's trying to reach Henry, to kill him, to end this battle with one blow. And he almost makes it. Contemporary accounts say Richard killed Henry's standard-bearer, the man carrying Henry's banner, cut him down. Richard was feet away from Henry Tudor, feet away from ending the battle. And then his horse went down, killed or stumbled in the marshy ground. Richard crashed to the earth. His armor is heavy, 60 pounds of steel plate. He can't get up quickly, and the men around him see an opportunity. The king is on the ground, vulnerable. What happens next is recorded in the bones found under the parking lot. The first blow comes from behind. A poleaxe, a weapon with a long handle and a heavy axe blade on one end, a spike on the other. It's swung by someone tall, strong. The blade comes down on the back of Richard's head. His helmet absorbs some of the impact, but the blade cuts through metal and bone. It slices away a section of Richard's skull, a piece the size of a hand. Bone fragments, brain tissue exposed. Richard should be dead, but he's not. Not yet. He's still moving, still trying to fight, still trying to stand. Adrenaline and desperation keep him conscious for seconds more. A second attacker moves in. A sword, thrust upward from below, angled toward the base of the skull. The blade punches through bone at the back of the neck and drives upward into the brainstem. This is the killing blow. Instant. Final. Richard III stops moving. The king is dead, but the violence doesn't stop. Even as Richard lies dead or dying, more blows rain down. A sword cuts across his face, takes off part of his jaw. Another blow to the skull. Another. His helmet is knocked off, or torn away. His head is struck, again and again. 10 wounds total to the skull and face. Some are fatal, some are redundant. Some are just rage, or hatred, or making sure the king is really, truly dead. And then, as Richard's body lies in the mud, someone shoots an arrow into his back. It lodges in his spine. A coward's shot, or a final insult. This is overkill. This is annihilation. This is what happens when a king loses. Richard III's body lies on the battlefield. The fighting continues for a bit, but it's over. Richard is dead. His army sees it. They break. Run. The battle is lost. Henry Tudor has won. He's the king now. Henry VII, founder of the Tudor dynasty. But first, he needs to deal with Richard's body. Because in 1485, people believe in pretenders, in rumors, in dead kings who aren't really dead. So Henry needs proof, undeniable proof that Richard is dead. Richard's corpse is stripped naked. Every piece of armor removed, every bit of clothing taken. The body is thrown over a horse, and then it's paraded. They ride the body through the streets of Leicester, the nearest town. People come out to see, to witness, to confirm. There's the king, naked, dead, mutilated. His body is displayed for hours, and during this display, someone stabs Richard's corpse in the buttocks. Not a battle wound. This is post-mortem. This is humiliation, degradation, a symbolic insult to the dead king. It's saying, this man was not worthy of respect, not even in death. The Tudors are sending a message. This is what happens to usurpers, to tyrants, to child murderers. Because that's what they're calling Richard. A monster who killed his own nephews to steal the throne. And monsters don't deserve dignity. Not in life, not in death. Finally, after hours of display, Richard's body is taken to Greyfriars Church in Leicester, a Franciscan friary. The friars are given the body and told to bury it. No ceremony, no royal funeral, no pomp, just a burial. The friars dig a grave in the choir of their church. But there's a problem. The grave is too small. Maybe they misjudged the size. Maybe they were in a hurry. Maybe they just didn't care that much. So they cram Richard's body into the hole, his head tilted at an awkward angle, his arms shoved down by his sides, or possibly tied. There's no coffin, no shroud, just a body in a hole. They throw earth over him. Mark the spot somehow. Records mention Richard's grave in Greyfriars for the next few decades. And that's it. Richard III, King of England, anointed and crowned, is buried like a criminal or a pauper. No monument, no elaborate tomb, just earth and stone and time. And for a while, people remember where the grave is. But not for long. In 1534, King Henry VIII, Richard's great-great-nephew through the Tudor line, ironically, breaks with the Catholic Church. He declares himself head of the Church of England, and he begins the dissolution of the monasteries. It's one of the largest land grabs in English history. Henry seizes monastery lands, sells them, redistributes them. Greyfriars Church in Leicester is dissolved in 1538. The friars are expelled. The church is torn down. The stones are taken and used for other buildings. The land is sold to private owners, and Richard's grave is lost. Within a generation, nobody knows exactly where it was. The church is gone, the landmarks are gone. The area is built over with houses, streets, gardens. By the 1600s, legends start. One story says that during the dissolution, someone dug up Richard's body and threw it into the River Soar. The story becomes popular. People believe it. By the 18th century, there's even a stone bridge over the Soar called King Richard's Bridge, where supposedly his body was thrown in. But it's just a legend. No evidence. Another story says the body is still there, buried somewhere under the old friary grounds, but nobody knows where. For nearly 500 years, one of the most controversial kings in English history is lost. A man accused of murdering children, a man killed in battle, a man vilified by the dynasty that replaced him, and nobody knows what his bones are. Until Philippa Langley. Langley is a screenwriter. British. In the 2000s, she becomes interested in Richard III. She joins the Richard III Society, a group of historians and enthusiasts dedicated to rehabilitating Richard's reputation. They believe Richard was slandered, that the story of him murdering the princes in the Tower was Tudor propaganda, that he was actually a decent, capable king who was overthrown and then turned into a monster to justify the Tudor seizure of power. Langley becomes obsessed with finding Richard's grave. She studies old maps, reads historical records, tracks the location of Greyfriars Church through centuries of urban development. By 2011, she's convinced she knows where Richard is buried. There's a parking lot in Leicester, Council Parking Lot number 4. Based on historical maps overlaid with modern street layouts, Langley calculates that this parking lot sits on top of where the choir of Greyfriars Church once stood, where Richard was buried in 1485. It sounds insane. A king under a parking lot, but Langley is determined. She approaches the University of Leicester, pitches the idea of an archaeological dig. Most academics are skeptical. The odds of finding anything after 500 years and multiple layers of urban development are microscopic, but Langley is persuasive and persistent. The university agrees to a limited dig. They'll excavate a trench in the parking lot, see what's there. If they find medieval remains, they'll investigate further. August 2012. The dig begins. They mark out a trench in the parking lot, start excavating by hand. The first day, September 5th, they find human remains, a skeleton, right where Langley predicted, in what would have been the choir of the church. The archaeologists are stunned. The skeleton is male, adult, medieval, with severe scoliosis, with battle trauma, with a hasty burial. Everything matches historical descriptions of Richard III's burial. But they need proof. They need DNA. And here's the problem. Richard III had no surviving legitimate children. His only son, Edward, died in childhood in 1484. Richard's direct line ended with him. So they can't test direct descendants. They need collateral relatives, people descended from Richard's siblings, and specifically, they need mitochondrial DNA. mtDNA is passed down only through the maternal line, mother to all children. Daughters pass it to their children. Sons have it but don't pass it on. It doesn't change much over generations. If they can find a living person who is a direct maternal line descendant of Richard's sister, Anne of York, the mtDNA will match. Researchers start searching genealogical records, tracing maternal lines forward from the 15th century to the present. It's painstaking work. Most lines die out, or go overseas, or can't be verified. But they find one. Michael Ibsen, a Canadian-born furniture maker. He's living in London, working in a small shop making cabinets and tables. And according to genealogical records, Ibsen is a direct maternal line descendant of Anne of York. 16 generations separate Ibsen and Anne. But the mtDNA should be identical. Researchers contact Ibsen, explain the situation, ask if he'll give a DNA sample. Ibsen agrees. He's curious. Skeptical, maybe, but curious. Scientists extract DNA from 2 of the skeleton's teeth. Teeth preserve DNA well, protected inside bone. They also extract DNA from Ibsen's saliva. Then they sequence the mitochondrial DNA from both samples. And wait. Weeks pass. DNA sequencing takes time. Testing. Verification. By February 2013, the results come back. And they're definitive. The mtDNA from the skeleton matches Michael Ibsen's mtDNA perfectly. The skeleton is from the Yorkist royal family. The researchers don't stop there. They find a second maternal line descendant, Wendy Doldig, also descended from Anne of York through a different genealogical path. They test her. The mtDNA matches. 2 independent confirmations, but they want more proof. They do radiocarbon dating on the bones. Radiocarbon dating measures the decay of carbon-14 isotopes. It can date organic material. The result? The skeleton died sometime between 1455 and 1540. Richard III died in 1485, right in the middle of that range. The evidence is piling up, but there's more. Scientists analyze the isotopes in the skeleton's teeth. Teeth form in childhood and record what you ate and where you lived, based on the water and food you consumed. The isotopes show this person ate a high-protein, high-status diet as a child. Aristocracy, nobility, and the geographic signature matches the part of England where Richard III grew up, the North. Everything fits. They even reconstruct the face. Using the skull, forensic artists build a model of what this person looked like in life, and the face resembles contemporary portraits of Richard III. Same bone structure, same general features. By early 2013, the evidence is overwhelming. The skeleton in the parking lot is Richard III. February 4th, 2013. The University of Leicester holds a press conference. They've invited media from around the world. The room is packed. Cameras everywhere. Reporters from every major news outlet. The researchers present their findings, show photographs of the skeleton, explain the DNA results, the scoliosis, the battle wounds, the location. The conclusion: we have found King Richard III. The reaction is instant and massive. Within hours, the story is everywhere. Every news website, every TV channel. King Richard III found under parking lot. The headline is irresistible. It's absurd, darkly funny, tragic. A king, a man who ruled England, who lived in castles, who commanded armies, spent 5 centuries under a municipal car park. Tourists had parked their Fords and Hondas directly over the grave of a medieval king for decades, and nobody knew. The story goes viral. It's on late-night talk shows. Comedians make jokes. But there's also genuine fascination. This isn't just archaeology. It's a mystery solved, a legend proven true. For 500 years, people wondered where Richard III was buried. Was he thrown in a river? Was he lost forever? Now they know. He was under parking space 27 in Leicester. The discovery answers so many questions. Did Richard really have a physical deformity? Yes, scoliosis, severe enough to be visible. Shakespeare's hunchback was an exaggeration, but there was a real condition. Did he die fighting? Yes. The battle wounds prove it. Multiple fatal blows to the head, the arrow in his back. He was killed in close combat. Was he buried in Leicester? Yes, in Greyfriars Church. The legends about the river were false. His body stayed in that grave for 5 centuries. But one question remains unanswered, and it's the biggest question of all. Did Richard III murder the princes in the Tower? In 1483, Richard's older brother, King Edward IV, died suddenly. Edward's son, 12-year-old Edward V, was supposed to become king. Richard was named Lord Protector, regent until Edward came of age. But within months, Richard declared Edward V and his younger brother Richard illegitimate. He claimed their father's marriage was invalid due to a prior betrothal. Illegitimate children couldn't inherit. Parliament agreed. Richard was offered the crown. He accepted. And the 2 boys, Edward V and his brother Richard, ages 12 and 9, disappeared. They were last seen in the Tower of London in summer 1483. By autumn, they were gone. Rumors spread immediately. Richard murdered them, had them smothered in their beds, killed children to secure his throne. The rumors destroyed Richard's reputation, turned him into a monster. In 1674, workers renovating the Tower of London found a wooden chest containing 2 small skeletons. They were assumed to be the lost princes and buried in Westminster Abbey. In 1933, the bones were briefly examined. Conclusion: 2 children, roughly the right ages. But the bones have never been DNA tested. Requests to test them have been denied by the Church of England and the monarchy. So we don't know for certain if those are the princes. And we don't know if Richard killed them. The DNA from the parking lot can't answer that. It proves Richard's identity. It proves how he died. But it can't prove his guilt or innocence in the princes' deaths. What it does prove is that the Tudors lied. Tudor propaganda described Richard as grotesquely deformed, a hunchback with a withered arm, a monster on the outside to match the monster inside. Shakespeare's Richard III, written a century later under Tudor patronage, cements this image. Deformed, unfinished. The DNA shows the truth. Richard had scoliosis, but he could fight, ride, function as a king. The withered arm was invented. The Tudors exaggerated a real condition into monstrous deformity. After the discovery is confirmed, a battle begins. Not over history, over the body itself. Leicester wants to rebury Richard in Leicester Cathedral. He was found in Leicester, buried there originally. It makes sense. But the city of York objects violently. York was Richard's stronghold during his reign. He loved York, was popular there. York feels Richard belongs in York Minster, the grand cathedral in the north. Descendants of the Richard III Society sue. They want Richard buried in York. The case goes to court, the High Court of England. It's absurd and fascinating. Lawyers arguing over the burial rights of a king who died 530 years ago. The judge hears arguments from both sides. Leicester: we found him. He was originally buried here. He stays here. York: He loved our city. He should be honored here. In May 2014, the judge rules. Richard stays in Leicester. The decision is final. Leicester begins preparations for a reburial, a proper royal funeral. 5 centuries late, but proper. March 22nd, 2015. Leicester Cathedral. A coffin made of English oak, lined with white fabric, sits in the cathedral. Inside, the bones of Richard III. Outside, thousands of people. The funeral is watched by millions on television. It's a full royal ceremony. The Archbishop of Canterbury presides. Hymns, prayers, readings. Benedict Cumberbatch, the actor, also a distant cousin of Richard III through genealogical lines, reads a poem written for the occasion. It's solemn, respectful. Richard's coffin is carried through the cathedral. The same bones that spent 5 centuries in a shallow grave under a parking lot are now carried by pallbearers in ceremonial dress. The coffin is lowered into a tomb of Swaledale fossil stone from Yorkshire, a nod to Richard's northern roots. The tomb is elegant, simple but dignified, and Richard III, King of England, finally has a proper burial. Whatever his crimes, real or imagined, he was a king. And now, 5 centuries late, he's honored as one. Here's what the parking lot really revealed. Not just a skeleton, not just proof that legends can be true, but something deeper about history itself. For 500 years, Richard III existed in 2 forms. One was the historical Richard, a real man who lived, fought, ruled, and died. The other was the mythical Richard, Shakespeare's monster, Tudor propaganda, the hunchback child murderer. The 2 Richards were so different, they barely seemed like the same person. The skeleton forced those 2 versions to confront each other. The bones proved some things were lies. Richard wasn't grotesquely deformed. He had scoliosis, but he was functional, capable. The bones proved some things were true. He died fighting. Multiple fatal head wounds. He didn't flee, didn't surrender. He charged his enemy and died trying to kill him. That's brave. Reckless, maybe, but brave. The bones proved he was buried in disgrace. Shallow grave, no coffin, humiliation injuries. The Tudors wanted him forgotten, degraded, erased, and they almost succeeded. For 5 centuries, Richard was lost, his grave destroyed, his story controlled by his enemies. Winners write history, and the Tudors won. But they didn't count on DNA, or archaeology, or a stubborn screenwriter who refused to believe the legend about the river. The parking lot brought Richard back. Not as a hero, not as a villain, just as a man. A king who died badly and was buried worse. The skeleton doesn't answer every question. We still don't know if he killed the princes. Maybe he did. Maybe he didn't. Maybe we'll never know. But we know he was human. That propaganda exaggerated him into a monster. That history buried him twice, once in earth, once in lies. And that 500 years later, a parking lot in Leicester gave him back the truth, whatever that truth is.